David Smadback has put together this webinar, and with me today is Paul Hitchcock of Bath Caldron Attorneys and Lynn Schmidt, CEO of Linco Financial and Tax Services. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
So the premise of today is to bring some information to our audience about funding relief and what's available and what is the update, because I think we're about 5 weeks in to this situation, and things have definitely shifted and changed a lot. A lot of antiquated loan applications have been updated. I'm understanding people have had to resubmit for the EIDL loan if they got on board really fast and early, went through the long process like myself and several others did. The PPP program is out. We're wondering, most of us should be communicating with our banks through that, so we'll talk about a little bit about that. And maybe we can just be updated on anything that has changed over the last couple of days, or information that's needed to know in order to, if any way, soothe the unknown.
That sounds great. Kaz, do you want me to take it over?
Yes, please. If you could introduce yourself again and yeah, take it over.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Kaz, for having us on. Also, thank you to David Smadback, who organized this. And I want to give you a little bit of background on our firm, and then I'm going to hand it over to Lynn, who's going to get into a lot of detail. And a focus is going to be Q&A here rather than us talking at you the whole time. And I've had people email me some very good questions. So I'm got my cell phone here with the email questions, and I'll bring those up on the webinar. So our firm is Barth Calderon, and we are a law firm that's been around for 40 years. We are an asset protection, estate planning, business planning, financial planning firm. And we have a lot of people in Southern California near Disneyland, people there. We have an office in Oakland, small office in Tiburon. I'm a married guy with 4 kids. I live in San Rafael, so I'm very familiar with Fairfax, love the town. And our clients, we have 6,000 clients across the country, and they are everybody: families, small business owners, closely held businesses of all sizes. And as the situation started getting worse 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, our clients were calling our firm and they needed help. And some of the areas that were on the front burner for people were, for us as a firm, liability issues. As business owners, we have a lot of clients who own businesses and have personal guarantees supporting those businesses backed up by personal assets. So that's asset protection. And so we are very much helping people to make sure they're buttoned up, because we're already seeing new forms of liability around business owners and rental property owners. So we do a lot of workshops across the country like this, live workshops to groups like the Chambers and the San Francisco Apartment Association, the Marin Association of Realtors, and on and on and on. And so we have a lot of property owner clients, and they're dealing with new forms of liability, tenant, landlord liability. There just is a lot going on. Everyone's hurting, and at different levels. And so for us, our approach has been, okay, we have the liability side down, and we are helping people to get up to speed there and make sure they're covered. And then on the other hot button issue beyond liability has been the loan programs. And of course, we're all interested in that. Everyone's trying to put together an action plan, and it's been clunky, the rollout of that, and a lot of misinformation. And so for our firm, we really put together what I call our SWAT team to go understand inside and out the loan program. And our team consists of Lynn, who's a tax professional. We have legal people on the team, business planners, advanced planners, highly collaborative team that just went out and started getting on the phone with the SBA, getting guidance as much as we could from them, And then Lynn's actually downloaded the 900-page document. Lynn, I don't know if you've gotten through all of it yet, but she's actually reading it. It's unbelievable. And so we needed to be a resource for everybody. And the idea is how, what do people need to do to stay afloat here, stay above water, to survive and then thrive coming out on the other side as much as possible. And so the loans are a big part of it. And what we're going to do now is I want Lynn to give a broad brush stroke overview of kind of what we've been dealing with on the two main loan facilities and other new things that are coming out. And we'll get into some detail there. And then we'll start opening it up for Q&A. I'm going to read questions here. I've got quite a few. So we'll just start getting into it. So with that, Lynn, if you can start out, I think, maybe just real brief, mention of the two loan programs and then how we're involved with people and what's happening right now and how they need to prepare and so forth.
Sure, Paul. So just again, a little introduction on myself. My name is Lynn Schmidt. I am an accountant. I'm also an enrolled agent and a certified tax planner. Unlike Paul, who is near Disneyland, I am in Central Florida near Disney World. And so I think between the two of us, we've got as many people covered from coast to coast as we possibly can. And yeah, it's been an interesting few weeks, to say the least, right in the middle of tax season, to have all of this turmoil occur. So we're down to how can we help folks? There's 880 pages in the CARES Act, which outlined a number of programs, both on the individual taxpayer side as well as the business side. The two most popular from the business standpoint were the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, otherwise we call it EIDL, and the Paycheck Protection Program, which we have referred to as PPP. So we use those acronyms just to kind of make it easy for having conversation. And I think as Kaz has indicated or mentioned when we first started talking this afternoon, she, like others, have read that Paycheck Protection Program has maybe reached its maximum limit on what was originally set forth for funding. We know that there are a lot of folks out there still trying to apply, still preparing paperwork, still talking to the banks. The banks are still processing paperwork. All we have heard is that, yes, there is another round of talks out there for additional funding, because let's face it, we are nowhere near where we need to be to get business owners back on the road to recovery and keep Americans working. So it'll be interesting to see what unfolds in the, I don't know whether it's hours or weeks to come. Things have changed so dramatically. Sometimes we've had 3 changes of procedure in a matter of a 24-hour period. So that's how rapidly things have been changing throughout this process.
So Lynn, let's jump into the details of the loan. So just as a refresher, let's start with EIDL. So there's EIDL and there's PPP. So EIDL is, describe who that's for.
Okay, so again, both these programs are intended for business owners, okay? The EIDL program was the one where folks heard, hey, you can get a $10,000 grant. Well, the clarification is that it's up to $10,000, and that's always what the law said from the beginning. And it's, again, a process to provide funds not only for working capital, but also to provide for employees, for payroll, to keep the business operating. And it is just that. It is a loan, and it's a 2-step process. The first part was the grant. And then there was a formula that you had to go through to be determined how much you would get in a grant up front. The balance was then going to be decided by a case manager that would be assigned by SBA. It wasn't like a business would walk in and say, well, I want to apply for a $200,000 loan. Doesn't work that way. You report some initial financial information, a case manager looks at it. They're also looking at a number of other things. They're pulling credit. People are seeing their credit scores being tapped, because it does have to be collateralized for any loan that's above $25,000. So again, that part is a loan. It's funded by the United States Treasury. It's administered through the SBA. So the banks aren't really involved in the EIDL portion of the loan.
Okay, and yeah, and so what we've seen and we've been dealing with is on the EIDL loan, people go in, apply online, and there's an application that seems pretty straightforward, but really what happens then is a case manager gets involved, and it could be a few weeks after you apply, and then depending on what your circumstances are, they're going to start asking for financial information, tax returns, and so forth. And this is where it really behooves anybody who's applying to make sure that you've got your financials lined up. And this is where Lynn's getting, and the rest of our team, very much involved in packaging you on the front end, so that as you enter these loan programs, you look attractive, you've got your numbers ready to go, because they are going to start asking for them.
Okay, and may I just ask, if you don't have 2019 submitted, but maybe you've got your information together, you just haven't submitted it for tax return, are you then mostly reflecting on 2018 numbers?
No, they are accepting financial statements. So for example, if a business maybe is on extension, they haven't actually prepared their 2019 business tax return, but they have financial statements, they will accept the financial statements as a basis to begin with. What'll end up happening is they'll eventually want a copy of the tax return, and they'll probably want some other supporting documentation to make sure that the financial statements are in fact a true representation of the financial picture.
Okay, and if the documents that they want are in fact the tax returns, do you think it would still be the prior year that would be okay? Or does it mean that if you don't have your 2019, you might be out of luck?
No, they're going to want to see 2019.
Okay, so encouragement to get it done.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and Lynn, and someone's asking, what exactly is a financial statement? How would you describe that?
So otherwise referred to as a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement. So basically the balance sheet is going to be your assets, your liabilities, and your owner's equity. And the profit and loss statement, or said another word, income and expense statement. So those are our formal presentations of your books and records.
Okay, all right. I'm going to start, okay, and so before we get into the questions here, because I have some questions flowing in. So we have the EIDL loan, and that's for LLCs, sole proprietors. We've had a lot of people, a lot of our clients that own rental properties, no employees, because it's them, they own rentals, and they said, hey, can I apply for that? The answer is yes. And so it's, for folks who don't, have the, access to the PPP. So that's EIDL. On the PPP side, part of the problem there has been people even getting access to an SBA approved bank. And so, there are quite a few requirements, financial statements, tax returns for the PPP. We have some deep channels with SBA approved banks, so that are taking our loan packages. Obviously the situation's changing as the money's coming to an end. Hopefully they're getting refunded, but again, with PPP, certain banks may have some extra requirements for that bank, but it's going to be a checklist of information, and then it's getting in and coordinating with the bank on your package. And so those are the two main lending facilities. And I just want to get into the questions here because they're coming in fast and furious. So question one is, my business is tiny, so a quote unquote loan won't help. I want to apply for the 10,000 grant loan that will be forgiven. On the SBA website, there's no list of qualifiers that I can find about how to make sure I qualify without having to repay the money. Afraid to apply if it ends up being a loan. Can you provide, so what do you feel about that, Lynn?
Okay, so make no bones about it. You are applying for a loan. They're not just handing out free money with no strings attached. So again, I said it was a two-step process. After we got well into the program, they did disclose that how EIDL is being determined is, again, it's up to $10,000. So basically that what they're doing is they're taking a head count of how many people you had as employees. Now, before anybody gets upset, a sole proprietor with no other employees except themselves qualifies to apply for EIDL. However, they are then an employee head count of 1. If we just have one sole proprietor and no other employees. So again, it's what they're doing is they're saying it's $1,000 per head count of employee up to $10,000. So in this example, a sole proprietor, no other employees would be entitled to a $1,000 grant.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's been a little bit tricky, that portion.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's important too, because when I filed for my EIDL and it asked how many employees I had, I did not include myself because I was thinking if they're going to be looking at my documents with regard to employees, they're probably going to want to see all of the portions of taxes and funding that I contribute to. So I did not include myself. In my situation, or somebody like myself who's just learning that I can in fact be included as a number on that question, do we make changes? Do we leave it be? Can we get back into our application to adjust things as we learn?
No, you can't get back into your application. What you can do is when you are contacted by an SBA case manager, that's when you want to plead your case for any adjustments.
Okay.
You know, at the beginning, they were saying just reapply, reapply, reapply. Well, if we have, 30 million people reapplying 3 times,
yeah,
do you think they will ever get any of this paperwork processed?
No.
It's just going to cause a problem. Now, initially, if you got a confirmation number with the 2000 series,
yeah,
then they changed the program. That's when we kind of had the big rule change.
yeah.
And they did specifically say anybody who was in that group, they did want those folks to reapply.
Right. So
So
that's what
now-
I did, and I finished with I started, my number is now beginning with a 3,000. Or
Correct.
with a 3. And for me, on my point of view, as far as timing goes, I think I sent that in the first week of April and I've not heard a thing. Should I be concerned? Should I just chillax?
I think you have to play the waiting game. I have been on the phone. I have been on the phone with tier 2 specialists at the SBA. So these are not the folks at the front line that they've just hired and handed them a phone and said, here, have at it, just answer the phone.
Yeah.
These are people who've got experience, who understand more of the program and can actually answer some questions intelligently. The reality is they have already admitted it could be 2 to 3 weeks. And I even think that's optimistic. I know myself personally, I'm sitting right at about the 3-week level. I've not received an email. I have my confirmation number.
Okay.
I've not received an email. I've received no acknowledgement whatsoever, which they said you would not. After your confirmation number, after you get that, you will not hear any more about it until an email comes.
Okay.
Now, here's the problem, and here's my caution. How many folks' email is going to think that it's spam or junk mail
Good point.
Right.
and may miss that
Right.
email?
Right.
Yeah. Good.
All right.
point.
No, good point. Let me keep going here. So I'm a small sole proprietor. I don't have formal financial statements, waiting for my tax return from my CPA. The documentation sounds overwhelming. Should I forget about it? Can I double dip PPP and EIDL?
Well, let's take them in order. Your formal financial statements would be the Schedule C that is attached to your Form 1040. So you really do need to get that, at least if you get nothing else, get the Schedule C done right away. That is your documentation. That will serve as your financial statement. However, again, under EIDL, you're only going to, at best, unless you have other employees, you're at best going to qualify for a $1,000 grant. You're not going to qualify, well, yes, you will qualify. What they're going to look at is your net income, okay? Your net income becomes your payroll. That's how they're making the determination, okay? But with PPP right now, as far as using a sole proprietor's information to apply for PPP, the problem that we have is that the program's not set up that way because they want to see W-2s. They want to see payroll tax reports, and a sole proprietor does not have those. So EIDL became the way to apply and get assistance under the EIDL program for sole proprietors.
Okay, and double dipping, between the two, Lynn?
Well, again, you can't double dip. The way PPP was written is that if you got a PPP loan, you had to subtract out what you got under EIDL because you can't use the same expenses. So the same wages, for example, that you're gonna utilize the PPP funds for, you can't also pay those same wages with EIDL funds. So the strategy right now is for folks who are able to get some EIDL assistance is use the PPP for payroll. Because if the PPP is used for payroll and it's the forgiveness part comes in the 8-week period following when that loan is funded. So you've got 8 weeks to utilize the funds that you've gotten on approved expenses. And if you do that, those funds are supposed to be forgiven, meaning they will not be cancellation of debt income by the taxpayer, and that they don't have to be paid back. Now, if you don't use them for approved expenses, you have some problems. One, it's clearly a loan and not going to be forgiven. And two, since the main concept of that program was for payroll protection and to keep Americans working, they're throwing this little word around called fraud. And when you sign the applications, these loan applications, you're actually signing it, acknowledging what these funds are going to be used for. So I'm hearing things all over the place. Well, I'll just get the money, and if I had to lay off the employees, well, then I'll just use it to pay my bills. Well, this is where it comes back in your wheelhouse, Paul. How far are they going to take that and prosecute that? I don't know.
Yeah, and this is where, when, as people are taking loans, there's a bigger picture discussion there about you're taking on debt, what are the payback periods, liability, just all that factors into it. The question here about if my bank is not participating in PPP, is there a list of banks that are participating and will take my non-customer, will take non-customers? So the answer there is, yeah, it's easy to get a list of SBA approved banks that are are approved to do the PPP loans, but they're so overwhelmed right now, and those bankers, you know, it's just the reality. They're taking their A-level clients and giving them, you know, the treatment there. We do, our firm here have had, you know, some relationships for years with SBA approved banks, and we have several that are taking the applications that we submit through our program because of our relationship. So what I'll mention now is everybody who's registered for this will send a follow-up with a complimentary assessment of your own situation. If you want to jump on a call that starts with me to see where you're at, what's going on in your life with your business, and we've got a deep bench of experts that can give you input. So look for that as a follow-up. Happy to do that for anybody that wants to learn more and get into their own scenario. But yeah, it's tough finding a bank if you don't have a solid relationship that'll even take it. The other question I've got here is, if you are an all-volunteer organization, do the board members qualify as employees? Lynn?
No, it's clear. It has to be payroll. Payroll subject to Social Security taxes.
Okay, which that would not be the case with that scenario.
Correct.
And yeah, so someone's asking, are the interest rates set for EIDL loans? And so, yeah, Lynn, what is the interest rate? Is it 3 1/4 for the EIDL?
3 3/4, 3.75 on the EIDL and 1% on PPP.
And what's the payback period? Because I know they originally were throwing out 10 years, they squeezed it to 2. What is it now?
Actually, for PPP, they originally said 10. Now that's down to 2. And for EIDL, it said 30 years max. And I haven't heard any changes to that. But again, keep in mind it's 30 years max. It's just like at the front end, they said up to $10,000. Everybody heard $10,000. Everybody's hearing 30-year max. But again, since I don't know anybody who's actually been approved for EIDL yet, I don't know what the terms are.
That's a good point. I was wondering if you guys knew people who were being approved.
Yeah, well, we have clients that are getting PPP money, and it's substantial. I mean, I was talking to a business owner yesterday who got $580,000 for his business from PPP. So,
Wow.
you know, yeah, I mean, you know, they're doling out the money, which is why they don't have anything left. EIDL is a different story. They're at a snail's pace there. Lynn, if your SBA said if your loan started with a 2, reapply because it was before the big change, but if it starts with a 3, it is part of the new set. Accurate?
Correct. Yes, accurate.
Okay.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Back to that 8-week period for the PPP. Let's say, because you've just mentioned, you know, people who are starting to get funded for the PPP. Now, if that 8 weeks has come and gone and we're still not back to work, what situation are they in?
That's the situation where we're waiting to see what happens with a phase 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And question, I have a tiny net on my 1040s, approximately 14 to 18,000. Should I not bother with EIDL?
I mean, I would definitely apply because something is better than nothing. I spoke with a banker who told me she had a PPP application for as little as $2,500. And they took the processing of that application just as seriously as somebody who sent one in with 500,000 on it. So it's all relative to that individual situation. And, you know, every little bit helps.
Okay. Okay. Question, understand that you said loan to be used for payroll, but it also says rent or other expenses. Yes or no?
It does say rent. It also says mortgage interest and utilities. However, this is on PPP. They clearly have made it known that they want 75% of the proceeds, loan proceeds, used on payroll, and only 25% used on those other expenses. And if you don't fall within those guidelines, what will happen is the amount that doesn't fit within those guidelines will not be considered as part of the forgivable proceeds.
Mm-hmm. So that's super important to add the importance of keeping your paperwork together clearly, and the importance of potentially opening up a new financial account designed to receive and spend the money from for this PPP, and actually probably for any loan, right? Just, do your best to keep your ducks in a row and your paperwork together, because all that stuff could be confusing, particularly when you're back to work and you've got a full-on schedule and everything's coming back, and now you've got something extra to babysit. So starting early with consistent filing would be a good idea.
It's great. Very great point. Are 501c6s eligible for any of these programs?
I have not seen C6 in there. I've seen C3 in there. So, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I've only seen C3.
Okay. How about EIDL applying to volunteer nonprofits?
Again, it's not a matter of the volunteer. It's a matter of what code section they have been approved under Internal Revenue Code as a nonprofit status.
Okay. And then question here, the bank that hold, okay. I guess there's a clarification, 501c3? Is that
501c3 is absolutely entitled to apply, yes.
Okay. And then a question here, the bank that holds my commercial loan is deferring, but not deferring mortgage interest. Is that why the PPP is covering that?
It could very well be. I think it's more of a coincidence. But who knows? I wasn't privy to the negotiations as the law was being designed. But yeah, it is covering the mortgage interest, and we are seeing a lot of banks go into a 6-month deferment on paying of principal or on making payments, but they are clear that interest would still continue to accrue during that period.
Okay. And Lynn, if the number of employees I had in 2019 fluctuated more in the summer, for example, how was the number of employees decided? Also, if I had a construction loan for my business in the past from SBA, does that help me apply directly to SBA without going through a bank?
Okay, so we got a 2-part question here. So if you're considered seasonal, there are 2 alternate formulas, too complex to go into on this call today, but there are 2 separate formulas that a seasonal business can use to help with the calculations, and they can produce significantly different results. So they really have to be analyzed from an application process. And then, what was the second part again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was if I had a construction loan for my business in the past, right. Yeah.
Correct. So yes, they have SBA bridge loans. So if you have prior experience with the SBA, you can use these bridge loans, and it is supposed to circumvent this whole messy process. I can't tell you what the exact steps are. I just know that it's there. And I even went so far as to ask, for example, back in 2008 here in Florida, when we had 3 direct hit hurricanes, I had damage and qualified for an SBA loan. So that's a long time ago. And I asked the SBA directly, does something back that far count as far as a relationship with the SBA? And I was emphatically told it does.
Okay.
All right, good to know.
Okay. Yep. As a sole prop, is owner draw considered payroll?
Yes, and it's not the draw, but it's the net profit upon which your self-employment tax is based. So again, just like we were talking about employees before being subject to Social Security and Medicare taxes, with a self-employed person, they are paying Social Security and Medicare taxes on their net profit. So really where they're going to get their magic number is off the schedule. It's Form 1040 Schedule SE for self-employed.
Okay.
Is there a line item to that? Do you know? Top of your
There
head?
is off the top of my head. I don't know. It might be
Okay.
line 5, but it's going to flow from their 1040 Schedule C over to the Schedule SE, and that's where the calculation is based upon their net self-employment income.
Net self-employment income. Okay.
Yeah. And then Lynn, another question. Somebody applied last week on the portal for the SBA and was told they would be hearing from them within 4 days. It's a week later, no response yet. Is this normal? I think I know the answer. Your answer would be?
Yeah, I mean, when I hear stuff like that now, it's amazing after everything that has transpired since January 1, what makes me chuckle these days. And, you know, SBA responding in less than 3 weeks, anything less than 3 weeks, yes, makes me chuckle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, someone else is asking that they're a sole proprietor. You know, they're asking what is available for sole props gig workers who contract but are not set up as an LLC.
There's no requirement to be set up as an LLC. Again, if they're being paid on a 1099, they are considered self-employed. So they still should be filing a Schedule C as a self-employed person, because they're either an independent contractor, they're being paid on a 1099, self-employed. All three of those are synonymous with the same type of reporting for tax purposes.
Okay.
May I ask a question here as well? Perhaps a little off topic, but what about unemployment? I believe lots of people have been encouraged to file for unemployment, and as a self-employed person filing for unemployment, is there anything that you'd want us to know? Lynn?
As a self-employed person, the only thing to really know is, one, it's going to be decided on a state-by-state basis, okay? Because every state is going to have different rules. And a self-employed person is going to be fighting an uphill battle, because I don't know what each state is going to require for them to prove that they have no revenue coming in.
Okay.
Unlike when you're an employee, they'll do an employer verification.
Yes.
See if you're, no longer employed.
Yeah.
But when you're chief cook and bottle washer, who they're going to check with? So again, I know, like in the state of Florida, as well as many states, if you're even a corporation, but maybe you're only one, you're sole owner of a closely held corporation, and the business declines. I have absolutely heard of cases where they have looked to see that the business was actually dissolved to prove that you are now, in fact, unemployed.
Okay. Not just because you would fit into a non-essential business category.
Correct. Well, and there's people play games, unfortunately. You know what they do is they say, okay, I'm going to go collect unemployment, so I'm going to pass off ownership to my brother, my cousin, my whoever, but I'll still keep working.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see that. Okay.
So, you know, unfortunately, people spoil it for others, so they nail down all the criteria. So
would it be worthwhile just to say, and I think your words were in the beginning, file for anything you can, or, you know, apply for as much support as you can. Would it be safe to say that a self-employed sole proprietor running a small, quaint, tiny little shop in our town should file for unemployment just to see what happens?
well, I think, again, on a state-by-state basis, they should absolutely get on the state's website to see, because I know a lot of them are posting Q&A.
Okay.
And I think they could be providing some guidance right up front to, you know, give them some direction as far as that's concerned.
Okay.
That would be my first line of attack. I wouldn't necessarily say apply for everything out there, because as you mentioned earlier, Kaz, the documentation and keeping track of what's been received, what's been paid back, what came from what proceeds, all of that has to be carefully taken into consideration. Or if folks think this is a nightmare on the application side, I don't think the nightmares have even started yet once we start complying on the other side.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a point that comes up a lot because, you know, we've seen some clients who have gotten offers from their state for loans. And as a matter of fact, Florida was one of them. And, you know, the loan terms were, you know, the interest rates were at, you know, 13 and 14%. Yeah, you know, and so there's a business decision there because you've got access to these different loan facilities, you know, different interest rates. Some are, you know, grants, some are loans, different payback periods. It's almost like applying for college financial aid, right? There's loans, grants, forgivable, you know, stuff and interest rates. And, you know, in that scenario, okay, that looked kind of attractive until you saw the interest rate, comparing that to the 1% and the, you know, 3 3/4 of the government plan. So you got to be careful about these things. What Lynn said is right. We're advising folks that there's a front end and a back end. And we believe that many business owners need an advocate on their side that's in tune to this. It's getting in, and it's the loans coupled with everything else. What is your financial picture like? And you know, there's relaxed standards on withdrawals from retirement accounts, for example, IRAs and 401ks. There's, you know, tax cuts that are out there. The tax code is kind of being tweaked with, and you know, and so you got to have an action plan. 30, 60, 90, 120 days. Getting in is one thing, and I'll give you an example. So we have a client who owns 4 restaurants in San Francisco and Hawaii properties. This is his income, and he lives in Marin County, and his income went to 0 overnight, 0. And, you know, has personal guarantees backing his restaurants. And so for that family, there's a triage there is, okay, if, you know, if and when I can even open my restaurants again, there's going to be new guidelines they're talking about where tables have to be 7 feet apart. And so a lot of restaurant owners are now saying, well, I won't even be able to fill my restaurant. My cash flow is going to be severely impacted. I'm going to have these loans I need to pay back. In a lot of industries, you know, people are already leveraged. You know, entrepreneurs are just leveraged, you know, growing their businesses. And so you got to make smart decisions here. So that back end is really important to make sure that you're not, you know, biting off more than you can chew, and it's all, everything fits together, and having a strategic plan. So maybe that's obvious to everybody, but it's something that we're really kind of focused on in our discussions.
Yeah, well, it sounds like we might unfortunately see a lot of businesses that don't make it, or don't make it for much longer afterwards if they manage to hang in there. So let's hope they get the assistance, and thank you for all the guidance that you're bringing to this. Do we have any more questions? Are we nearly out of time, or?
Well, one thing I'll say, because someone's asking about it, they're asking if this is being recorded. So the answer is yes. We're recording this. We'll clean it up a bit, edit it, and everybody that's registered we'll send an email out with the recording so you can have that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else you wanted to contribute, Lynn?
No, I feel for the small businesses out there. I've been in this business for 40 years, and that's why I'm looking to help, same as Barth Calderon, as many as we can, because I truly believe, small business is the backbone of our country. Yeah. And we need to help as many folks as we can. Hopefully we can come out on the positive side of this when all is said and done.
Yeah. Thank you. It certainly is the essence of our town, all of the shops that we have, the storefronts. I mean, we are gladly stuck in time, and we love it. And everybody who's listening, we just encourage them as much as possible to hang in there and to stay current on what's going on. We thank you both for this. Is our audience across the country, or is it just mostly Fairfax and Marin, do you know, Paul?
Yeah, so this is just to the Fairfax audience.
Okay.
Yeah, we're doing many webinars, everywhere, but David and I got together and then, with UCAS to do the Fairfax focus. And, again, I'm a Marin resident with 4 kids, and we enjoy Fairfax very much, and it's eerie now to go down there and see everything closed up. So I feel the pain of everyone that is a business owner in Fairfax.
Yeah, thank you. So before we go and people start to jump off, because I'm seeing a lot of thank yous and appreciation for what we've done today, I do want to announce that there is a website, a brand new website affiliated. The town and the chamber have come together very dynamically over the last week and a half. And there is a website we'd like everybody to become familiar with, which is where we can, or you can, send information about what your business is doing at the moment. It will be an ongoing website where we hope to send all traffic in the future to merchant traffic, visitors, and our patronage hopefully will come to this website and find out who's doing what in town and what kind of specials and what else is going on. So fairfaxopenforbusiness.com. fairfaxopenforbusiness.com. And anybody can reach out to me as well. Mine is kaz@hairfaxstudio.com, and I will forward you the information needed. Hopefully we're going to launch that tomorrow. So it's a little bit of a last minute scramble for people to get their information together.